morning, Bucknuts. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, March 28th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Buckeyes got a tough blow when it was learned that Tuf Borland suffered an Achilles injury. I asked Urban Meyer, is his season in jeopardy? And Urban Meyer said, no, they, meaning the medical staff, are telling us right now, no, that the season's not in jeopardy. But, man, if it really is a ruptured Achilles, and Urban didn't specify, he just said it was an Achilles injury, but if it's a ruptured Achilles, I have a tough time imagining Tuf Borland actually playing football this fall for the Buckeyes backs.
Yeah, that's a real blow for Ohio State. I mean, it stinks because the kid had a ton of experience. He was a guy who I think a lot of us thought was going to be able to come in and call the defense, play a solid middle linebacker. Really high hopes for him this year. So losing Borland would be very unfortunate, but that looks like where we're at right now. So I guess the silver lining is you'd rather it happened in spring versus in the camp leading up to the season. That way his recovery isn't affected for getting to play in an extra year. He's a young guy. He can redshirt and get back. But, it certainly stinks. You hate to see a guy that I think that everybody was hoping they would have to count on not potentially be playing.
If Borland does miss the season, as I expect at least, let's just opine who we think might step up. Right now, Justin Hilliard is getting the first-team reps, but Baron Browning is getting the second-team reps at middle linebacker. Looks like those are the two main guys. If you had to pick between those two, who do you think is going to win that job?
Well, when in doubt, you go with the younger guy, right? It's not like Justin Hilliard doesn't have pedigree, but when in doubt, you go with the younger guy by a couple years. So, I think Browning's the guy that if the coaches could pick who wins the job, at this point, I think it's pretty clearly Browning. Hilliard, he's just been so injured. Even if he grabs the position by, the horns and ends up moving forward on it, you have to be thinking in the back of your mind, is he going to get hurt again? Is he going to get hurt again? Is he going to get hurt again? Just because it's happened to him a couple times now. So if I had to have my druthers about it, I think Browning's the one to get it. I certainly hope that he's, grasped the defense as a concept. Physically, we all know how good he could be. So let's put it this way. This is a big year for the capabilities of the coaching staff, particularly the linebackers coach. We've all had our question marks about the hire and the performance of Ohio State's linebackers the last year. So this is a sink or swim moment with the Tuf Borland injury at this point for Urban's best friend.
Yeah, it was a huge concern in my book even before the Borland injury. Now it's just a monumental.
It's the biggest concern on the defense. It's the biggest concern on the defense without a mile. Yeah, on the team. I'd agree with you on the team. Oh, I'd agree with you on the team because guess what? Yay, let's talk about the quarterbacks. One of them's going to be really good. Yay, let's talk about the offensive line. I think they're going to be perfectly fine. Yay, let's talk about the corners. Wow, it would be amazing if Sheffield and company take that next step this year. And you've seen that plenty before. This is a problem. This is a real problem. And we've seen before what bad linebacker play can do at Ohio State when you want to talk about winning a championship. So this is certainly a big spot of concern, to put it mildly.
Is there a Borland brother that plays fullback that we could move to middle linebacker this year? No. That's too bad. That's not an option. Looking at the outside linebacker spots, backs, right now Malik Harrison, Keandre Jones are the first teamers. Dallas Gant, true freshman, early enrollee. Pete Werner, sophomore. Those guys are the backups. You think it'll stay that way? You think Harrison and Jones will be the starters, Gant and Werner will be the backups, or do you think maybe Gant or Werner can work their way into a starting job?
I think Harrison will start. I've felt like that for a while. Whenever we saw him last year, he was impressive. He's got enough game experience. You have to feel pretty comfortable with him taking one of the spots. We just don't know enough about Keandre yet. That's the real truth. Urban gave him – the biggest thing we know about Keandre Jones is that when he signed with Ohio State, Urban said he's a future captain. We really don't know much more about that. We haven't seen enough of him in games. He was decent last year in pretty limited reps. I think he has a lot of potential, enough potential to say that I think he's going to beat up Pete Werner, who a lot of people are really high on. I don't know. Dallas Gant having a nice start is a great sign, but again, he's a true freshman. I'm not confident that a true freshman is just going to step in and start at linebacker at Ohio State. We've seen it before, but there's a lot of really good, talented young guys that are right there too. So I do think Harrison is the more likely of the two to have a role as a clear-cut starter. I think it'll be Jones, but I certainly don't want to rule out Werner, who we've heard nothing but good things about behind the scenes.
And the Buckeyes will get Taraja Mitchell, in the fold this summer. Also Kayvon Pope, but Taraja Mitchell is a guy that could actually play middle linebacker. I mean, he's, listed at 6'2", 232 pounds. number 2 inside linebacker in the country in the 2018 class, number 44 player overall in the country, so a high 4-star kid. I have no idea if he can come in and play as a true freshman. Normally I would say no, but this might be a year they need him to at least add depth there. Your thoughts on whether Taraja Mitchell can actually add some quality depth there as a true freshman this fall?
Can he start? Sure. Do we want him to? God, no. It's not a knock on the kid who I think is going to be very, very good. I think it's a much bigger concern of saying our linebacker position is such a problem that a kid who's been on campus for 2 weeks is suddenly repping with the ones and needing to start. Like, that's not how you go to Dallas and beat TCU. That's not how you go to Happy Valley and beat Penn State. You have to have some sort of experience at middle linebacker. If you're going to, and not even just game experience, but just a guy who's been there and knows the system. How well does Mitchell know the defense? Not very well, considering he's never practiced in it once yet. If it comes to that, I'm going to be really worried holding my breath this fall.
Switching to the offensive line, looking at the center position, early in spring, Urban Meyer was saying center is a concern, and we even had some people reach out to us, some sources saying that's just Urban trying to motivate Brady Taylor. Taylor's got that job unless something crazy happens. And then earlier this week, backs on Monday, Urban said Brady Taylor's doing great and didn't make it seem like there's really much of a battle there. So that's your update on the center position. Now, Josh Myers to me looks good out there, and I think if he is the backup, I think that's a really good thing. As a redshirt freshman, then he could, possibly move into the starting role in 2019 at the latest. But just your thoughts on the center position. It looks like Brady Taylor, as we expected, it's his job to lose.
Yeah, that's I think the way we all need to look at it. And look, a lot of people who are recruiting centric on a site like Bucknuts, I can't blame you. But you look at the recruiting pedigrees of a Taylor versus a Myers, and it's night and day. Obviously, Myers was an offensive lineman that everybody talked about from the moment he was a true freshman in high school. A clear-cut 5-star future stud, right? And Taylor was a guy who was 2 stars that they bumped up to 3 when OSU took him from a Columbus City school. The hype just wasn't there, right? But Taylor has quietly been the guy who has been technically the backup for a couple of years. Now, of course, when Pat Elflein was there, we all know Billy Price would have gone in, but the guy who was technically the 2 in a lot of times was Brady Taylor. Last year, the number 2, Brady Taylor. So guess what? If you want your center to be a smart guy who can call the line play, get everybody lined up where they need to be, I think Taylor can fill that role. I think your best case scenario is he turns out to be a Jacoby Borland type who, yeah, maybe he's not an NFL future center like the last 2 guys are at Ohio State, but he could be a very good player. I think you want him to be solid. He's not going to be a superstar, but if he's solid and he's not a weakness and he lets the rest of the guys perform well, then you're in a position to succeed. So if Urban's comfortable with him and he's not making a big deal about it, then great. Josh Myers can get some more reps and eventually take over in the future, and Taylor can have a solid year for OSU. I think it's a good thing that the staff isn't sitting here worrying about it, because we've seen before what happens whenever there's a position that you're not really sure about. I mean, how many times we talked about guard for a while there? I remember at one point when Ohio State didn't have any depth at right tackle, when Isaiah Prince was getting just abused a couple years ago, we were all just like, is there anybody else they could throw in there, right? Well, right now it feels like you at least have somebody capable in that role, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, sticking with the offensive line backs, I feel like Thayer Munford, we're not talking enough about him. I mean, collectively, as people who follow Ohio State, media, fans, whatever, not only is he running with the ones at right tackle, as we all know, I think this kid could be a future standout, and maybe even this year. I mean, I really like what I'm seeing out of Thayer Munford so far at right tackle.
Yeah, it's amazing how little we're talking about him, especially when I just mentioned, Isaiah Prince, when we plugged him in his first year at right tackle, was not the best situation, right? You'd figure we as Ohio State fans would be a little scarred by that, a little worried by that, right? Now, of course, Prince has gotten infinitely better and has certainly had an awesome year last year, could make himself a very high draft pick at left tackle this year. So it's part of the learning curve. These kids are human, they're young. But you'd figure we'd be panicking about a second-year player potentially being the clear-cut starter at right tackle. But there's not even talk about, Malcolm Pridgeon's finally getting it, or do they need to move Brandon Bowen to tackle, or none of that. It's just, Thayer Munford starting. And it kind of reminds me of is when Michael Jordan was running with the ones a couple years ago in spring, and we all were like, well, that's not going to hold up, is it? And then it just did, and it wasn't a thing, and it was just fine. I kind of think that's how we're going to look at Munford here a little bit. So now tackle is a little more difficult to step into than guard, but, Munford has a year of experience in the program under his belt now, and, I mean, let's put it this way. Again, Urban doesn't seem to be worrying about it. He's not even making it out like it's a real competition. It's not being discussed as much as you would nearly expect. And maybe some of that's the supernova glare of the quarterback battle. But to me, it's amazing how just quiet, calmly, and confident they are in the right tackle spot. So, I certainly want to see Munford play. I'm going to hold my breath a little bit about him. Frankly, of the entire offense, that's the spot I'll hold my breath the most about. But I'm not, worried about it. It's certainly not like a, DEFCON 10 like linebacker is right now. So, credit to Thayer Munford. And remember what a lot of people said about him in recruiting when he came on late? They said Ohio State staff is really high on him, maybe higher than a lot of people who were covering him in recruiting. And if he's going to start in his second year in the program at OSU at right tackle, that's a really good sign for OSU finding yet another person in their evaluation that exceeds expectations.
Wow, it's going to be pretty rare we have a show where we don't talk about Ohio State's quarterback situation. And today's show is not going to be one of those shows. We are going to talk about the quarterback situation. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. I want to get your update on that. Didn't have you on last week. I know you had a sick child you were dealing with. So Urban Meyer still says as of this Monday, just 2 days ago, there's still no leader at the quarterback position. Now, we know it's not really 50-50. Even if he's saying that publicly, it's got to be at least 51-49. Read between the lines. What do you think is going on at the quarterback position?
Read between the lines. I think Urban's desperate to not have either one of them transfer out if they don't have themselves as the clear-cut starter. But he can't dilly-dally, and he knows it. So my position hasn't changed. And honestly, until we see the spring game, until we see these guys go out and perform, until we've gotten stories from the Jersey style scrimmage and stuff, that sort of thing, it's a little bit of speculation. Yes, Dwayne Haskins is a cannon on. Yes, Joe Burrow is very accurate. Yes, Tate Martell is a jitterbug with the ball. In the end, it's a lot of speculation right now at this point. My position certainly hasn't changed. I think it's going to be Haskins. I just think that the fact that he has that style of offense Kevin Wilson wants to go to, the quarterback type that they've been recruiting the last year, I think it's going to be Haskins. But let's face it, it's not going to be something that's decided until the end of spring. And if it actually is publicly decided, then which one of them is going to be leaving pretty quick. So, because neither one of them is going to sit around to be a backup at Ohio State, particularly Burrow, who it's not like Burrow can sit for 2 years and then start after that. My position from the start has been Dwayne Haskins is the starter. There's a change-up package with Martell where he comes in at times, and Joe Burrow is also the starter at Nebraska. So, that's my guess as to where this is going. But I will correct you on one thing, Dave. This is only the third time we've mentioned the quarterbacks in the entire podcast, even though the first two were more than a little offhand.
Okay, that's true. But as far as focusing on the quarterbacks, for...
Yeah, that's all we're going to talk about until one of them transfers, right?
And then, then in the fall it's going to be Haskins or Martell or Burrow or Martell. No, by then I think we will.
Or the first game the offense doesn't score 60 points, right? Like Haskins will go in, and it'll be 42-7 over Tulane, and people are going to be like, Tate Martell would have scored 60 on them. Yeah, where's Martell? That's what we're going to end up being here at Ohio State. It, right? Haskins is going to have growing experiences. Even me, who I feel like I'm as big of a, riding the Haskins train as anyone here, he's not going to be perfect right away. You just expect him to perform at a high level pretty quickly, but there are people who are convinced Tate Martell is the second coming of, Braxton Miller with, Cardale Jones's arm. So it never stops at a place like Ohio State where elite isn't good enough.
Well, Bax is always elite. Thank you very much to the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. You can read his column every Sunday on Bucknuts. It is The Bucket. Thank you very much, Bax, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it and hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.